Hey there, gang. I'm here today with an exciting announcement as well as to discuss some changes that apparently have been made with regard to some win conditions proposed by Behavior. So for those who haven't heard, Behavior has come out and said that in the next upcoming patch with Aurella Rose, I believe it's going to be on the 6th of May, they're making it to where normally we were expecting Haste and Hindered perks and effects were no longer going to stack. So this means Clown with his yellow and pink bottles, Knockout with its rework, right, getting that 5% hindered when pallets get thrown, the new Hex Nothing But Misery with that 5% hindered, all of that, none of it was we were expecting going to stack in this next upcoming patch. However, yesterday, Thursday, the developers have come out and said that they've gone back on this. They've decided, after all, that they're going to allow Haste and Hindered effects to stack with perks in addition to perks stacking with themselves cumulatively. And in addition to that, they are still going forward with their proposed perk buff changes. So perks like Unbound and Furtive Chase, you're not going to see 5% haste from those perks anymore. You're going to see 10%. And this is going to give those perks some viability, which personally I think points toward the developer's direction with regard to these perk buffs. And not even just that, why they were thinking about stopping the effects from stacking to begin with. So going toward that, and again, this is just my presumption based on my understanding of the game and my own experience. I've been playing just about killer only, Clown specifically, for over 4,000 hours. I try to approach the game from a very analytical and objective perspective with regard to what, in a way, killer has to do, but I'll be honest, right? I do play Clown. And when it comes to that, when it comes to how you have to win the game, especially as a killer like Clown, right? A lot of that boiled down to running generator perks, perks that really weren't very fun to play against. And Behavior is trying to go away from that. They want to encourage killers, especially killers like Clown, who do struggle in macro, do struggle in mobility, to say, even though because of this I would be running a generator perk, instead I'm going to consider running haste perks, not just because they're fun, but also because outside of gimmicky situations, they possibly could be good. You know, a build kind of like what we're seeing right here. Sure, while in some technicalities, it might not necessarily measure up to a full gen perk meta build, like say the Gift of Clown build with Dying Light, Gift of Pain, etc. But the idea is that Behavior wants to buff perks like these in a way, you know, such as Unbound, to where you could run a build like this and you're not just auto losing even if you play fairly well in Chase across the board. Even so, because of that, just the ability to run these perks in place of generator perks, that spices up the life of the game for both sides. And I really think that's what it's all about. I think Behavior is trying to shift the game away from gen perks being objectively the perks to go to when it comes to actually trying to win your matches, and that you can look at chase perks to kind of achieve the same end. Because one of the problems with running builds like these, right, running perks like these, is that you give up the opportunity cost of taking another perk. So in order to take a perk like Unbound, in order to take a perk like Rapid Brutality, etc., right, the individual value of that perk needs to be pretty damn good. And I think the problem that Behavior realized, right, they were initially concerned, here was Behavior's initial concern. They were afraid that if they buffed haste perks to the point where they become worth the opportunity cost slot, that you would have killers running builds like this, and it would be unhealthy. It would possibly be objectively stronger than some meta builds. And this not only for the overall state of the game, right? When it comes to how killers win their matches, it would feel unbearingly oppressive both in the micro, right? But also looking just on the lower spectrum of things, they didn't want survivors who didn't really feel like they had any sort of agency because they don't even really know what they're going against. And thus, by standardizing the cap of what killers can work with regard to haste effects, this would make it easier for all Survivor players to really counterplay, right? It's easier to counterplay a killer that moves at best with 15% haste versus randomly having 35% haste. Does that make sense? Because that has a very dramatic impact when it comes to playing individual tiles, especially chaining tiles. So I think that was their concern. But again, if buffing these perks and making it to where they can no longer stack, if killers are not encouraged to run these perks independently, right, or even together and cycle them, as I talked about in my previous video, well, then they're not really accomplishing their goal. If their goal, again, is to encourage people to run these perks by making them stronger independently, even though they cannot stack, if people aren't running the perks, even though independently they are stronger and cannot stack, the goal's not accomplished. So I think that's why what we're seeing is behavior is looking to make it to where, yes, haste and hindered effects can now stack with perks. Yes, perks and haste and hindered effects can stack with themselves. And they want to see how much of a problem it is early on buffing Unbound, buffing Furtive Chase in this capacity. And if it doesn't create that problem that I was talking about, where you have this unhealthy interaction between killer and survivor with regard to stacking haste and hindered effects, then maybe for the time being, we can go forward with that. Because, you know, again, it's about making people want to use these perks at the expense of the bland and the stale gen meta perks, right? Because if you're not getting a more relative consistent outcome with regard to the overall state of your matches running chase perks, and that all you have to really enjoy is the slight vicarious experience of what, you know, few survivors you put in difficult chase situations, that's not really much to go home with. You get what I mean? A lot of people want more than just a few good chases when they play killer. They want to feel like a killer. They want to win. They want to kill survivors. And even if, again, right, we're not trying to take chase perks to the point where they're better than overall meta perks, this is, I think, why they're doing things the way that they are, and they should continue with that, you know? Maybe down the line, they can consider limiting the ability for haste and hindered perks to stack. I'll go on and say, you know, I like running 45% haste, etc. bonuses on a clown myself. It's not like I'm against haste and hindered stacking, but being able to cycle haste and hindered effects when they are all independently stronger is still good on clown and probably could be good on other killers. And this was something I did discover when we did test things on the PTB. You know, in the event that haste and hindered wasn't going to stack, I was prepared, gang. I wasn't going in to the new patch with nothing and just all despondent and whatnot. I was ready to do things differently. And now that we see haste and hindered effects can now stack, I've also adapted to this discovery alongside the new buffs to Unbound and Furtive Chase. And I want to give you guys a little bit of a glimpse into what I plan on working with. Now, I don't have any matches for y'all in this video itself using what I'm about to show you, and this is because, well, it's a waste of my time pre-buff, right? Unbound, 5% haste. Furtive Chase is a bit more manageable given that it has the undetectable, but still 5% haste. You really do need that 10% for these perks to be looked at even individually, and so we will be addressing this in the new patch, right? Around May 6th, like I said. But this is to just kind of give y'all an early glimpse on what I have in mind. So first things first, I've got 3 different builds for y'all. We're kind of go through each one independently. This one right here is a pure chase-centric build. The idea here is that you're not really wasting any time at all in the event you do need to vault a window. You get 10% haste for 10 seconds in this new patch with Unbound when you do vault that window, and that is insane, y'all. That is the equivalent to a base haste yellow bottle, but with more than 2 of the invigoration duration add-ons, right? Y'all see Garish Makeup Kit and Solvent Jug? This is basically that, but 2 Solvent Jugs in a Garish Makeup Kit, or 2 Garish Makeup Kits on top of the base kit duration. That is really, really good when you can stack it now with your yellow bottles. So you're going to be looking at 20% haste, and with these add-ons for about, you know, it's going to be, what is it, it's going to be for 9 seconds, you're going to have 20% bonus haste from this combination. It'll then go down to 10% for 1 second before Unbound expires. But that's way different than cycling the effects, playing more into pink bottles like I had in mind. And I think that's going to be more fun. You know, again, if Haste and Hindered effects couldn't stack going into this next patch, yes, you could still run a build like this. In fact, a build like this was kind of what I had in mind. But instead of running Garsh, Makeup Kit, and Solvent Jug, you're going to be running Flask of Bleach and either 15%, because you're not going to be able to stack your yellow bottles with the Unbound and the Unbound speed, right? So instead, you're going to be looking to pink bottle survivors so they get a hindered effect as you would vault the windows to get your haste effect, and you're effectively doing what you would be doing beforehand, right? As I talked about in my previous video, while saving the economy of not needing to use your yellows. So that was what we had it in mind. This was what I called cycling, and we go from cycling to concurrency. You see a concurrency of haste effects. That's why we're looking to put a lot of emphasis on Garsh, Makeup Kit, and Solvent Jug. And yes, this build, you want to focus non-obsessions with Save the Best for Last and Rapid Brutality. You want to look to kind of build those stacks up. When you vault those windows with the fast vault speed of Superior, you stack it with the invigoration of your yellows for that full duration. And you're going to be seeing something similar as well with the other two builds here. These are more stealth-oriented builds. One of them, actually, I'll even talk about, is less Lyres dependent. I ended up replacing Furtive Chase with Play With Your Food. And I really like this because I figure if you're chasing the obsession anyways, especially in a slightly extended chase, for lack of a better term, you're likely under the game mechanics going to be breaking chase. And the moment that happens, you get 5% haste. That 5% haste is indefinite until you take a melee swing. So as long as you don't miss the melee swing, you can take that as extra momentum to go from the injured to the down state on that next obsession. And I think it's a very unique and interesting way of using Play With Your Food in a way that no one has ever done before. So I'm really excited for that. Especially, again, the synergy that you're able to do this because of Friends to the End and Nemesis. This is a very, you focus the obsession the entire game while rotating the obsession, so I think that's going to be very fun. And again, I'll be talking about this more when the new patch does come, but there's not really more I can say or show y'all beforehand when the perks themselves haven't been buffed, right? 5% haste it's not enough to warrant the perk slot independently. Now, going forward, there's one more set of topics I do want to discuss with y'all. We are going to be looking at the developers' proposed, the way they're taking things when it comes to survivor win conditions and the abandonment system. With the chess strategy that I've talked about in my last couple of videos, just as a very brief recap, where people were looking to they're looking to stall survivors for 10 minutes from completing generators and then winning matches as a result of that. I'll even say, y'all, I was victim of doing so for science. The developers have responded to this in a very interesting way, as well as come forward in the sake of transparency, talking about the win condition for other matters regarding the abandonment system. So, without belaboring or being too verbose here, I'm going to go ahead and pull up for y'all. Oh my gosh, I'm very bright here. I'm going to pull up for y'all the text and we'll look at it together. My apologies for the technical shuffling here. I'm kind of improvising when it comes to formatting this video. I hope y'all understand. And what I have in front of y'all is what the developers have said is their response with regard to the abandonment system and how they treat it when it comes to both killer and survivor. We're going to start off talking about the survivor side of things first before we look at killer, even though killer is listed first, because I kind of feel like it plays more into understanding killer better if we do it last. Starting first with survivor, when all other remaining survivors left alive in the trial are bots, the last survivor that is not a bot can abandon the match without receiving a disconnection penalty, and the match is considered a draw. So what this basically means is that if your team has quit on you, right, it's not like you're kind of screwed and you can't just leave yourself, right? You're going to end up getting a draw. However, one thing that's important to understand is that it says when all other remaining survivors left in the trial are bots. So this means that, let's assume, for example, 2 survivors have been killed, and it's you and a teammate left, but they DC because they don't want to play the game anymore. You're now allowed to disconnect from the match. You will only get a draw. The killer is not going to be considered killing you, right? He's not going to be able to win against you because you drawed. And similarly, like, you're not going to lose to him. Similarly, the other person who botted, he's not going to be able to do the same to them as well. And going into the next situation of things, right? Scenario 2, when all survivors alive in a trial are in the dying state, the survivors can abandon the match. Anyone who is still alive in the trial but in the dying state, you can all abandon the match without receiving a disconnection penalty, and the match is considered a draw. So let's assume, for example, Killer slugs everybody, right? Or anybody who's left alive. He doesn't have to be four-man slugging. If everyone is put into the ground slugged, all of those survivors can leave the match. They didn't lose the match, and the killer themselves basically doesn't win against them. And this is just insane to me. It's actually kind of crazy how do you lose a survivor? I actually almost gotta wonder, y'all. Think about it like this. Looking at scenario 1 and scenario 2, I'm kind of curious, how do you lose? Because if your teammates can quit and you can quit and you didn't lose, and similarly, if your team all gets knocked down and you can quit and you didn't lose, how do you lose? Because again, let's look at scenario 2 again. What happens if there's 2 survivors left and the killer slugs for the 4K, right? You don't lose, basically. Killer doesn't win. And I just don't understand why we're treating things this way. I'm very curious how this is going to impact the survivor escape rates and the perspective of things, because this just otherwise doesn't make any sense. And similar when you look at killer, right? Like, let me give you another example too, by the way. Like, what happens if you're playing Oni, all right? And here's a real example when it comes to scenario 2. You're playing Oni. You've sacrificed 1 survivor already. You've got 1 survivor on a hook. There's 1 generator remaining. The last 2 other survivors are looking to 2-man the generator together. You pop your blood rage from the survivor you just hooked. You go and locate the 2 survivors that are 2-manning that generator, and you down them with your power instantly, right? Before they pop that generator. It's got like 3% progress left. You just barely clutched the down on both of those survivors and won the match technically, right? Beforehand. Now though, these survivors, they're allowed to abandon the match before you hook them. And they didn't lose that match against you. It just makes no sense to me. And when you take this information, right, and when you jump forward to how they're treating things when it comes to killer, scenario 1, if all survivors are bots, the killer can abandon the match without receiving a disconnection penalty, and the match is considered a draw. So basically, right, like, you remember how we said if you kill 1 or 2 survivors, survivor 3 DCs and then survivor 4 DCs because they're allowed to DC and then they didn't lose? Well, now if you decide you don't want to hook the bots, you basically also, right, you don't win the match even though you made them DC, even though you got 2 kills ahead of time and there's only 2 bots left because you didn't hook the 2 bots. It's a draw. I don't understand that. And then you have scenario 2. If the match is continued for... This is the biggest one, by the way. I want to draw a lot of attention to scenario 2. If the match has continued for 10 consecutive minutes without a generator being completed or regressed, y'all hear that? The developers have changed the standard with regard to killer win condition. They literally changed the whole abandonment system because of how killers were utilizing it for the chess playstyle. Read this again. If the match is continued for 10 consecutive minutes without a generator being completed or regressed, the killer can now abandon the match. So again, survivors can't touch the generator at all because you'd have to then regress it, in which case the timer starts over. So if the survivors are not even touching the generators in any capacity and they are hiding from you, you have to wait 10 minutes in that case, and even then, it's a loss, not a draw, a loss. You lose the game. You survivors 3-gen against you, they decide they don't want to play the game anymore and they want to hide. You don't win that game. You lose. Survivors choose not to play and you're playing into what you have left. You lose. Again, how do you lose as survivor now? Seems like it's very easy to lose as killer, and it's a real disappointment because this goes back to what I talked about in my previous video. The expectations for killer versus survivor are very different. Killer's expectations are a lot higher, and I really think that's where, again, a lot of the tribalism comes from with regard to killer versus survivor. A lot of killers literally look down on survivors because it's like we're playing against children, with all respect. When I have so much more that I am expected to do responsibility-wise versus Survivor? How can I look them in the eyes like they're my peers? You kind of get what I mean? It's really disappointing to see what the developers are proposing here. And to kind of more play into this, I've actually got a match for you guys using a killer that I don't normally play to just show you how absurd it is that I could previously have won a match that now isn't a win, it's only a draw. So I know the thought of me playing another killer is quite the surprise to many people. I mean, hell, I put out a video pretending that I was switching to Singularity on the 1st of April, and a lot of people were shocked by that. And for those that don't know, I will play Variety Killer as build requests. When survivors gift subs to me on Twitch, I will usually play a build for them, especially playing another killer. And in one of these matches, I was asked to run this build on Houndmaster, a killer who I think, including this match, I had played twice in my life, so I have virtually little to zero experience. And I ended up against a team of survivors that were looking to play very altruistically, both, I think, flashlights and sabotaging hooks. And as a result of that, I had to slug. However, slugging means you don't win, am I right? So if you're really curious what it looks like going forward with what the developers have presented with regard to win condition of killer versus survivor and the abandonment system, and how it's virtually impossible to actually win against survivors when they can just abandon the match and draw, well, maybe this will kind of showcase that.
Catastrophe awaits.
What did I do to deserve this type of shit, by the way? Alright, what do I plus? Chase command.
Seek.
God, how do I pull him back? Dude, I'm already not.
Return! You are a worthy companion. Now! Loyal one, aren't you?
Obsession, but... Okay. Best map on DVD, I know, right?
Stop!
Are you like... So like what? Can I... Okay. That's what I'm looking for.
Now!
Whatever, man. Let's get this game over with, I feel like. Actually, oh, we can't. Why would I think we could do that? I have no idea what I'm doing right now, man.
Now!
Oh, clean.
Good work. Extra chum for you after. Now!
Oh, you have to press R2. That's kind of a problem, huh? Why would I swing there, man? Probably because I'm just fucking tired. I'm not gonna lie, y'all. My head's not fully in the game right now. Oh, you have to press him too, man. I don't even know the inputs on this killer yet.
Yes.
Catch.
Wouldn't let me press redirect there. Oh, probably because I wasn't facing? Maybe.
Catch.
Scratch marks in DVD, dude.
Catch.
Oh. Gotta be intentional. Yeah, because what happens when you do too well in DVD? You get the shittiest fucking maps. What's the planner? Don't we have... About to say, don't we have rapid? Or Stabiffle? Stabiffle means that she doesn't get enough wiggles off to where we can drop her in time, so...
Yeah.
Sorry I can't get the most out of your perks, by the way. I am doing what I can, but I don't even know what the hell I'm doing with this killer, I feel like, at times.
Now.
Oh.
Look.
Alright.
You're the best.
Oh, I missed. Oh, we did get her. Okay.
Look at you. Extra bones for you.
I'm gonna pick him up because if he does anything, that's gonna remove... Oh, wow. That just means no anti-tunnel.
Now.
I didn't charge it up long enough. That should have hit. Completely disagree, but okay.
So. That's it. So. Catch. So.
Thought I saw Unbreakable for a minute.
So. So. Catch. Catch. You
GG's.
are a worthy companion, aren't you?
By the way, technically, this is a draw. I don't win here. This is not a win according to behavior. Crazy stuff, huh? After everything and how they played, this is not a win. This is just a draw. You know, the survivors forced me to slug with their playstyle. But, you know, because I won, they don't lose. Funny how that works out in DBD. I'm glad you like the gameplay at least, servers, because I'm not gonna lie, dude. At least like the first half of it, like my head just was not at all in the game. I just wasn't really, you know what I mean? But like, yeah, we did. I started to kind of learn on the fly. How come this is a draw? It's a draw because behavior says that if you get a 4-man slug as a win condition, then then survivors don't lose if they choose to leave. So, yeah. These survivors apparently don't lose this match. It's just a tie. Crazy stuff, huh? They forced me to have to slug to get the win. They deliberately were like saboing everything. They used background player even if they had any tunnel. And because I had to do what I had to do, they don't lose. So for those that don't know, I don't play Houndmaster much at all. This might have been my second game ever playing them. So I didn't really know much of all what I was doing, and yet regardless, I still won, right? Won in air quotes, because technically it's not a win. These survivors came in with flashlights and sabotages. They did what they could to stop me from getting my hooks. They actually had some meta builds in order to accomplish that. The win condition against a team like this in the playstyle is to slug. I accomplished that, but even though I did what I needed to do, they in turn didn't lose. And it's kind of, it genuinely, like, y'all, I'm sorry, but that is fucking ridiculous. If the only type of situation where I feel like this makes sense is if the survivors have expectations of children. Because it's only children where you not only as killer would be expected to go so easy on survivors with regard to both game mechanics, but even in the event where you play well, we have to rewire the code, we rewire the condition, and then just change the definition and just say, nah, actually you lose. Nah, actually you didn't win. Nah, actually survivors drawed. It's just so, what would you call it? Pig nose? Like it's just dumb. It's dumb as fuck. I'll actually say that. I know the developers said they're looking at changing it, but you put it on the list of things. You know, I've seen some people say where they feel like the developers are not beating the survivor coddling allegations. And yeah, gang, I'm sorry. You know, I get that the survivors as a whole and at the baseline, you know, I've talked about how the developers balance around the fact that most of them are really awful at the game and that they're just trying to keep these people playing the game. But if where we are at with regard to the player base and those demographics and those numbers is that the people that make up the demographics they are of such a caliber where we just have to say they don't lose, right? Or that the killer doesn't win against them whenever they blatantly lost so that they keep playing the game. You just can't expect killers to not have the animosity and the hostility that they have, because it's like we're signing up to play a game where it's like we're the underdog. And it's so strange and funny because killer is supposed to be the power role, yet for all intents and purposes, it's like we're not the power role. We're the role that takes on a challenge because our expectations out of us are higher, and yet people pretend like it's the other way around. So I just don't get it. And it makes circumstances like this and matches like these less satisfying because, again, the only real joy that I get out of winning is just the principle of the fact, because the reality beyond the principle nowadays is you don't win these matches, you draw. Kind of lame, gang. Sorry, just saying. So I think that kind of just about wraps up what I have to say today. I'll be honest, gang. I've been really just out of it these last few days. So sorry if, you know, the standard of this video didn't live up to those in the past, but I really gave what I can. I want to get something out to y'all very soon after the developer's announcement. I didn't want to wait too long with regard to that. Coming up next week, I have the Community Lab number 2. I've got y'all's votes on which build y'all would like to see me play on Clown and talk about. So expect that on Monday. And in addition to that, if you're interested in learning how to play Clown better, I'll have a very detailed Clown guide that'll be sure to link in the description. And also, matches such as these are streamed live on my Twitch. I typically stream during the weekdays, usually Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So I've linked my stream in the description as well. Other than that, if y'all really enjoyed these videos, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe. Not just for yourself so you know when I post new videos, but also because it helps me on the algorithm side of things. YouTube will promote my content to more people, which means I'm able to teach and help more people as a result of that, and that's what I like about making videos. So other than that, I hope y'all really enjoyed this video, and I'll see y'all next time. Later, gang.